Of course, Christchurch all used to be a delta, and it looks like that delta is making its way back.
It's a pretty nasty day, isn't it? You can imagine that if something like Gabriel happened here with 500 millimetres of rainfall, we'd be really swimming through the water at the moment.
So even 30 mil has done this?
Even 30 millimetres. The water table is very high, so it doesn't take much rainfall for you to see surface water.
The land here subsided about 1/2 metre, which meant that we had the equivalent of 100 years of sea level rise in one event. It's almost like returning to the way it used to be. This area all used to be a delta and wetland, and we can expect that the delta will be returning.
So we're naturally a delta?
Yes, yeah, Christchurch.
It's not a term I've heard, really.
No. Christchurch is a deltaic city. I mean, this was once all a large delta.
What we're seeing here is what Christchurch used to look like. It was made up of spring-fed lagoons, estuaries,
Of wetlands and streams with raised areas with forest on it too. You could actually take a mokihi, which was a waka or a canoe weaved out of flax, all the way from Kaipoi, right down past Lake Ellesmere, Te Waihora, all the way to Taumutu. You'd have to drag it over some areas of higher ground. You can imagine it as a food basket, eels and fish and flounder, inanga, the whitebait, and of course all the birds. So it was an area that was flourishing with life, high in mauri, as you'd say in Māori, high in that vitality. That wisdom is still held by Ngāi Tuahuriri, how to live on the delta, how to be on this delta. The reason for building the city here was because of its close location to Lyttelton and the port.
I think the classic sort of 19th century approach was to move the water off the land as fast as possible.
And with that approach and mindset, the sacred streams that run through Christchurch more or less were thought about as drains. Significant amount of work went into that. Yeah, quite a feat of engineering.
There's lots of different types of flood risk that Christchurch experiences, from the rainfall, but also from the river flows coming in from upstream, and then also the coast to the sea level.
One of the main reasons why Christchurch is a delta system is because of the Waimakariri River.
One of the really fortunate things that we have here is that we have the Southern Alps mountains. They provide a lot of protection from weather systems that come through, sucking in a lot of the rainfall that occurs. But those same systems, if the rainfall falls on the east of the divide, that water flows through the system and then can cause high flows in the Waimakariri. Beautiful, but quite a big, dangerous river in many ways. Floods of 1868, for example, widespread flooding across the city centre. The double system combined protects to 6,500 metres cubed per second, which is an enormous flood event. And that's if the stop line's over top. There is, of course, a risk still present that the stock banks are, in an extreme event, washed out. That would be called a breach. That has happened in other events elsewhere in the country, and we would hope it doesn't happen here, but the risk is still there. There's quite a comprehensive flood management plan for the city. Things have been put in place to reduce the movement of water through the town, as well as drainage systems, as well as the stock banks. All these things work together to reduce our flood risk.
This was started by Ngāi Tahu not long after the earthquakes. What we can see has been built here are swales that have been ecologically restored or put back into native vegetation. And these are running into storage basins where water flows during flood events to stop these areas getting flooded.
So it's acting like a wetland does, really, soaking up the water.
With the sea level rise, the water table's rising. As that water table rises, so too the wetlands return, so too do those streams.
So that situation means that when it rains heavily, because the water table is so high, it doesn't really have anywhere to go, so it causes much more flooding than it would do. The ground can't absorb it anymore.
Current projections are something like 35% of Christchurch will be inundated by 2100. Large portions of Christchurch will be somewhat like here, where we have water pooling on the surface.
Is that across the whole city?
No, it's mostly the low-lying areas, the areas that used to be wetlands, the areas that used to be covered in streams and swamps and ferns and fens, and so we can be expecting that to return. How do we approach that? What do we do with that, given that that's going to happen?